What's up YouTube? My name's Tom, I'm a digital designer, and today we're going to be learning how to design and code HTML email. Now it's not that hard. A lot of people think it's quite hard, but it's not. We're going to break the video down into two parts. So part one will be the design and part two will be the code. So in today's video, part one, we'll be designing in Adobe XD. If you don't know what it is, go and read about it. It's a great bit of kit. Now you can design this sort of stuff in, I would suggest either XD, Figma or Sketch. You just need something so you're able to measure the pixels around your spacing and things like that and easily set up styles. So I'm going to be doing an XD. If you want to follow along, please do. So let's get started. So first thing I always do in any sort of digital project is set up a style guide. So this is just to make sure, you know, that we keep our styles consistent throughout project and future projects. So I know I'm going to be designing more than one email in this style. So if I set up a style guide now and say, you know, my headers are always this size, my H2s are always this size, my body copy is like this, my buttons are like this, then that will just keep things consistent all the way through. And if at any point I want to update my styles, if I just change it on my style sheet that we're about to make, it will update in all of the designs that we've done. So the email we're going to be designing is going to be a welcome, a welcome HTML email, which will be for my own subscriber list, which is very small at the moment. But if you want to subscribe, there'll be a link down below, so you can click on that and subscribe, and then you can receive these lovely emails as well. So to start things off, we're going to draw out a new artboard. So you just press A for artboard. I'm just going to drag out a square. That's rather big. Let's make it 1000 by 1000. And then I can just hit my selection tool, press Z on my keyboard to bring up the zoom tool, drag a box around, and here we are. I'm going to double click on here to rename, and I'm going to call this Style Guide. I'm going to call it TP Style Guide. So what I want to put on here is we need to decide a size for our headers. I'm going to have two headers. I'm going to have an H1, an H2, some body copy, and a button, I guess, and then maybe we should probably put our colours in here as well. So if I just grab my text tool and just click, I'm going to write, this is our H1. Now I know that I want this to be in Lato here, and in terms of colours and stuff, I'm going to base this on the branding that I already have for myself, which is on my website. So if I just select, this is my my planning for my website in XD, so if I come in here, I can grab all of my colours from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this home page, I'm just going to copy, I'm just going to bring it in here, and it's pasted in there. That's where I get my colours from. And then I'm going to grab my logo, so just copy that artboard, come in here and paste it in, it will just come in there. And then I'm also going to grab this black colour, so I can just grab anything with that on and bring it in here. You can also copy stuff in from Illustrator and things like that, that's no problem. So I'm going to get this black text here, and at the moment you'll see down here I'm selected on layers, so we can see this is the artboard I'm on and these are the layers. I'm going to click on this button here. This brings us to our styles, and I can add colours, character styles and components. So I'm just going to add a colour. So if I have a look here, my fill is 272727, so I'm just going to press add here, and there it is. And what we could do is we could double click and rename this black or something like that, but actually I'm going to leave it like that, so I have the hex code and it's very easy to just jump in and copy it when we come to coding. So I can delete that now, I've got what I needed. And I'm going to make my H1 black, and I'm going to make it Lato, and it's going to be bold, and I know that I want this to be 36. So I've got my point size is 36. Now to get my line height, for headers I always do, for my H1s I always do my line height at 120% of the font size. So to do that, in the line height part here I would do 36 and then an asterisk for times 1.2, press enter, that gives us 43.2, I'm going to round it down 43. So I know this is my H1, and what I can do here is character styles, press add, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to write H1. Now for my H2, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to half the size, because I don't have a huge typography system in these emails. I'm going to keep them quite simple. We don't need to go into too much detail, we will do in later videos. All I'm going to do for my H2 is I'm going to half it, so I know it's going to be 18. And then for my for my H2 line height, I think I'm going to end up having like 2 or 3 lines of copy in this section. So rather than having it at 1.2, I think that might be a bit too compressed. I'm going to times it by 1.5 to give it a bit of breathing room. So just do 18 times 1.5 gives us 27. And then I want this to be green, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this green colour here, add it to my swatches up here, and there we go. If I select this now, make that green, and then I can type this is our H2, add my character styles here, rename it H2, and then I'm just going to drag it underneath. Of course you can use whatever system you like. And then for my body copy, I'm going to do it at 16, so what I'm going to do is just going to drag out a text box here, and then if I come into Chrome, I've got my brief that I wrote myself. So if I just take a bit of copy here, copy that, paste it into this box here. That didn't really paste in, but no, don't worry about that. Press V to get to my selection tool. Drag this out. At the moment this is Helvetica Neue, that's not what we want, so we know we want it to be Lato. It's going to be regular, I'm going to have it at 16, and I want my body copy to have a bit of breathing room, so I'm going to do 16 times 1.5, which should give us 24. And then in terms of colour, I'm going to make it this black colour, and then maybe I'll drop the opacity to 50%, something like that. And that looks pretty good for now, although perhaps it shouldn't be 50%. I've got another colour on my other screen, sorry, and I'm just going to use this colour instead. So I'm going to bring that back up to 100%. I'm going to paste in this colour, which is a nice grey. We don't really want to be working with opacity in email. We would do that on websites, it's not really a problem. But as you'll see when we get into the coding side of things, you have to be a bit careful with sort of not using too many fancy techniques and stuff. So when you can, you know, we can achieve a similar grey just by using a grey colour rather than actually using an opacity of black. So that being said, let's add that colour grey there into our swatches up here, and then we'll add this in here and we'll call this our paragraph. Paragraph, spelt like that, drag that under there, easy peasy. So we've got some of our type here, and then we probably want a button. So let's have a look at our brief. So basically I'm saying thanks for subscribing to my newsletter, here's a 25% discount if you want me to build your website, and then I'm going to have a button that says commission website. So if I copy this, we may as well start with this as our button, and I'm just going to draw out a square for now, or a rectangle for now. I'm going to tell it to have no border, and I want its fill to be this lovely green that we've got. Then I'm going to press T, I'm going to type out my text, and then I want it to be white, and we don't have white in our colours yet, so we can just quickly come over here, type out white, 6 Fs, and then I can add white up here. And I know I want this to be 18, just a little bit bigger than my body copy because I want it to stand out a bit. And I'm never going to have multiple lines of text here, so I'm going to do 18 times 1.2 for the line height, gives us 21.6. Let's round it up. Let's make it bold so it stands out a bit. Let's center it inside our button here. Now, here's why we're using XD or Sketch or Figma rather than using, you know, InDesign or Illustrator or Photoshop or something. If I select this and I hold the Option key or Alt, if I hover to the next sort of bounding area, you can see how much padding there is. So you can see there's 25 pixels at the top, 24 at the bottom, 36 at both sides. So when it comes to coding, all we're going to do is we're going to write out some text and give it some padding and say, you know, I have 25 at the top, 36 at the right, etc. But what we actually want to do is, I want it to have 20 at the left and right and 15 at the top and the bottom. So if I drag this over here, it will snap. I can hold Shift and use my arrow key, press it twice, and I know that's moved it 20 there. And same from the top, I want it 15 from the top. So let's get it to snap at the top. I'm going to press Shift and down once, and then let go of Shift. 2, 3, 4, 5. If I hold Option, I can see I've got 15 and 20 there. So I've got 52 on here and 20 there, so I need to lose 32 on the width. So if I select this, I can just come up here, my width, and I can go minus 32. Now I know that this is exactly the right size, and same again at the top. We've got to do some maths. So 15, I think I need to drop 19 off the height. We'll soon find out if that was right. Minus 19, there we go. 15, 15, 20, 20, and I'm just going to select around that, hold Command and G to group that, and then in my components here, we'll make our first component. If I click there, we've got it here, and I'm just going to call this CTA, call to action, and now wherever I am, I can just drag out a CTA, and if I were to change my original one, it should update all of the other ones. So you can imagine if you've got loads of emails and things like that, loads of different pages on the website, this comes in handy. So I think we're good for typography and components for now. That will get us started. So what we want is the rest of our colours. Now I'm not going to use them all today, but I'm just going to get them set up in my style guide anyway. So we know we've got the green one. And what I like to do is I just draw out a little square. Maybe let's make this 100 by 100. Take off the border, and I know my main sort of brand colour is green. If I hold Option and then click and drag and hold Shift, I can drag out a new box, and you can see I've moved it 10 pixels to the side of that one. And all I'm going to do is use this eyedropper tool to pick my purple, and then I can add my purple up here. And I'm going to drag another one, pick my eyedropper, get my blue, add my blue up into my styles, and do another one, and then I'm going to get my red. See, that's snapping to 12. I can just nudge it over to 10 because I like things to be neat. Grab my red, grab my yellow, and then there's all my colours. And if we're being picky, we can also, add these in just so we can see our full range of colours here. And then I can just bring this up to make that nice and neat. And I can get rid of this because we only use that for reference. And there we have our style guide. So that was pretty easy. Now we're ready to design the email. So HTML email is coded as a table. So you just have a big table. Inside the table you would have rows, and inside those rows you have cells. So if you think of it like this, there's your table. Inside the table you would have, actually let's make this an artboard, it's going to be easier. So there's your table. Inside the table you have rows. So there's a row. Inside that row you have cells. So you might have something like this, and then you might have something like this, and then obviously that's like the worst email ever, but that's how it works. So you have one big table, and then you can have a row, and then in the row you can have cells, and then in those cells you can put your content. Now the way I design mine, I always have the content of my email at 600 pixels wide, and then I sort of set a background colour on the email, so the wings sort of out to the side of the main body of content has a colour. So to design this, I would make my artboard 800 pixels wide and 2000 tall. That's just always how I start. And then I've got a nice background colour on my other screen here, bear with me, if I just copy that. If I come to my artboard here, I can select a background colour here in Appearance. I can click here, paste in my colour here, and I can add it up to my swatches as well. So I'm going to call this TP Email 1. So at the moment this is 800 pixels wide, and I know we said we were going to design our 600 wide, but I make it 800 just so we can see the sort of what the background of the email is going to look like, so it all works together. And then I'm going to drag in a 600 pixels wide box. So I just dragged in any size box, come to the width, 600, I'm going to make it 2000 tall, and I'm just going to center it and make sure it's at the top, make sure it's got no border there. So there we go, that's sort of the start of our email. We're going to put all of our content in the middle there. So what we can do, we can come off our styles here and back to our layers, and if we wanted to, we can be very meticulous with our labeling, which is probably a good idea. So I can click on this and I can call this sort of email background, and then if I hover over, I get the option to lock the layer, so now we won't accidentally move it whilst we're designing. So in terms of design, we're going to want my logo at the top. So this is how I would design. I'm going to grab out a box. I'm just going to draw it out like this, come to my colours, Make this green, and then have I brought my logo in? Yes, we brought my logo in. So I can just grab my logo here, copy, come over here, paste. Obviously this is ginormous, so we're actually going to make it 50 pixels wide in this design. So I can select this, 50 pixels wide, and I'm just going to bring it to the top so I can see it. And then this has got a border, as you can see, so we take the border off. I'm going to bring this to the right, so it snaps at the top. And I'm going to knock it in 50 from the top, 50 from the bottom. So hold shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually 50 is probably a bit too much for the top and the bottom. Let's do 20 top and bottom and 50 from the side. That's where we want to be. So if we zoom in, you can do this sort of stuff by eye. I would most often, if I'm doing it for myself, I sometimes do it by eye. You know, if I'm doing it for a company and we need to be all professional, I would do it properly. Let's have a look. So we've got 25.4 there, so we can just knock off -5 there. That's fine, that'll do. So there we go. There we've got a little logo strip at the top, so I can drag around those, group that, come to my layers, and just call this logo bar. And then I actually designed a header earlier, so I'm just going to copy that in. We don't need my logo anymore, we can delete that, and if I paste this in, so TP email header, this is just something where I took the icons from my website and just sort of laid them out here. I quite like that as an email header, so I'm going to copy that. Oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to, what am I going to do? Let's select this artboard, double click here to come into the artboard, and then I can hold shift to select all of these things. Actually, let's not do that. What I can do is I can export it. So at the moment you can see this is 1200 pixels wide, and it needs to fit in a 600 pixel wide space, which seems a bit odd. So if you don't know about Retina screens are like on Macs and fancy screens and stuff, and they have twice the amount of pixels. So always sort of make sure your images are twice the size than they need to be, and then they'll always appear nice and sharp. So what we're going to do is come to our Finder here. We don't need this, so in here, in my folder where I've got my XD file, I'm just going to make a folder for images. Then if we come back here, I can File, Export, Selected, and then we need to come to, where are we? We're on TPTV, how to code the emails, images, so TP email header, and then export as a PNG, that's fine. And then we have it, and then I can just come to my Finder here and drag it in. So here it is, I can drag it up here, and then I'll just make sure to set it at 600 pixels wide. Make sure it's centered on my canvas, and just drag it down, and there we go. We don't want that guide. Okay, so there we go, there's our header, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at our brief again. So I've got an H1 here, so I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to draw out a text box and then paste in my text, and it is in there, it's just currently white apparently. So if I just select my black, there it is. But what we want to do, we know we've already set up our style, so we can just click on our style, H1, there it is, it's an H1. So I can drag this up to keep it nice and neat, and that's looking pretty good. So in terms of spacing around this, we want to think about it, and we know that this email is 600 pixels wide. What I want to do is have 50 pixels of padding all the way around this. So I can bring it up to the top to start, and I can knock it down 50. Whoops, new mouse, not very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that's right there. And then what we could do is we could sort of move it over to the side and nudge it out like we have done before, or we can make sure this whole box is 100 pixels less than the width of the email. So if I make that 500 pixels and then I center it, I know that because my email is 600, that I will have 50 pixels on the left, 50 pixels on the right, 50 at the top. So we're good. And then all I can do for my next part, I can hold Option, drag this down, set this to be an H2, get my text, and I'm saying to say thank you for signing up, blah 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 blah. Come in here, paste that in, and there we go. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of treat this top section as its own little block. So I'm going to have a little button in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to nudge that up 3, so there's 20 gap there, there's 26 there. So if I select this and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, now I know that there's 20 pixels between each of these, and I can group these together if I want. And come to my layers here, and I can call this hero content. Looking pretty good. Not bad so far, all very easy. Hopefully you haven't lost you yet. So just remember that you can get to your styles here and your layers here, and it is a good idea to label things up. That's the wrong one in here. So I know I've got hero content, I've got the header, I've got the logo bar, I've got the background, so it's all nice and easy. When I come back to it in a year's time and think what the hell's happened here, it's very easy because it's all labelled up. So we want to get some paragraph text in. So what I might do is I might ungroup this for now. Just drag down one of these, come to my styles and turn it to a paragraph. The reason I copied one of those is because I know the width is already set to 500. So it just saves me a step. Come back, grab my bit of copy that I need, copy it, double click in here, paste, come out of there, and then I know I'm going to want this to be 50 pixels from here, and we're looking pretty good. So now I've got sort of a section which is going to have 4 blocks. So if somebody's reading this email, what we want to get our branding in at the top, obviously, and we want to get a call to action in above the fold. Now the fold is what people call the first part of an email before you sort of can't see the invisible bit underneath. So before you have to scroll, you want to get your main message and your sort of call to action up in the top there. If you don't, you know, someone might open it and say, well, what's the point of this email? Delete it. Or there's no branding, I don't know who this is, delete it. When actually you can quite clearly see here, you've probably just been on my website to subscribe to my newsletter. That's the only way you could do it. So you might recognise the branding. And then it says, thank you for subscribing to my newsletter, Tom. Or we'll just insert the name there. Okay, great. He wants me to buy a website. Well, yeah, I want that. So click on the button. Or not sure. Let's have a scroll down. And now I'm going to list bullet points. These are the reasons why you should have a website, or this is how it works, or, you know, to reinforce your message a bit. So I'm going to have 4 sections down here, and I know I'm going to start with a header. I'm going to have a bit of paragraph, and then I'm going to have a bit of a header, and I know my header is going to be black. Let's have a look. So we've got, here's how a project usually runs. So I've got my first step is content strategy. Come in here, paste that, bring this box up like this, and as we did before, I'm probably going to make this 20 pixels below that because these are connected. And then what I might do is add in, want to add in something to make it look a bit nicer, a bit easier, because I think it's looking a bit word heavy. So what I'm thinking, we can have a little box here, and we can say this is going to be number 1. So we can just put in a big 1 in here. Maybe if I make this an H1, but make it white, this might look pretty cool. And we say 1, content strategy. So something like this looks pretty good, I think. So I can group that, I can group that, and then I can make this 2 below. And then we need to grab our actual copy. Easy peasy, grab that from there, paste it in. What we need to do is we need to bring this in, so something like that, doesn't really matter. And then I can group that, and then I can bring this up so it snaps, and then hold shift, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy peasy. And then I can just hold option, drag out another one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can hold command. So at the moment this is a group, and to get into this one I could either ungroup everything, but that's a bit annoying. I could double click to go into that group, I could double click to go into that group, I could double click to then access the number, and then I can double click again to be able to edit that number. Or if you hold command, you just shoot straight through groups. So I can just hold command, double click in here, zoom in so we can see what we're doing. Hold command, I'm selected on there, I can press T. That's embarrassing, isn't it? There we go. Right, number 2, and we're good. and then come in here, wireframing. I can just type that out. I can copy this whilst I'm here to save time. So I know this is going to say wireframing. Zoom out a little bit. Paste in my new text there. There we go. That's point number 2, and you can see where we're going with this. I'm going to drag this down, and you see how that just snaps. So you see it shows me pink, so it's showing me that this spacing matches, so I don't need to hold shift and nudge it 5 times. This is why I love XD, I love Sketch. They're all brilliant. This is going to be 3. Design, we're going to design some stuff, obviously. This little yellow pointer thing is really getting on my nerves. Okay, paste in the text there. This is design. And then number 4. Drag it down and it'll snap. Double click, double click, double click, double click. 4. And number 4 is probably development. There we go, that makes sense. Actually, let's just take this. Paste that in there, make sure we reveal our text and then close it up so we're nice and neat. So here's where we are so far. So you see, we haven't really been going that long, and we've pretty much got the whole design done. Like, this stuff doesn't take that long. Hold Option and drag this one down here, and I want to match that, so I'm just having a new paragraph by itself. Once we've finished all of the above, blah 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 blah. This is a very copy heavy email. You can see I haven't worked with a copywriter. If you're working with a copywriter, your life will be amazing. Try and get one. As if not, you have to write all the text yourself, or with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like me, I'm not a very good writer. This email is probably not going to do very well, but it looks nice, and it will be coded well. So you know, that's good. And then we're going to have we're going to repeat our call to action. That's always good practice. So what's happened is they've read all the way down. You know, if they have read all the way down, which is unlikely. So if you haven't got them there, they're going to read, oh, okay, this does sound like quite a good idea, and then rather than having to scroll all the way back up, just as like a user experience benefit, just repeat the button down here. And now you can see we've run out of space in our artboard. Uh-oh! Zoom out a bit, select your artboard at the top, just drag it down a bit, and you can see our white. We can't actually edit this because remember we locked it, so we can come to our layers, unlock it here, drag it all the way back down, and we're good to go. And as you may have seen, these are all not labelled, so that's just bad. But make sure you label yours, but I don't want to waste any more of your time. So we're just going to have a little bit of a sign off, I think. Just have a look at my other screen. Yeah, we're going to have a sign off, and then we're just going to put in some social buttons. So holding Option to duplicate this block again. Aha! I didn't lock this, so that was getting in the way. And it snaps, and I've got a sign off. I hope to hear from you soon, Tom. And then didn't mean to open that. Paste that text in there, and you know, I'm just going to put a little kiss on the end because that's nice and friendly. If I was working in a marketing department at the moment, they would tell me not to do that, but I'm working for myself, so I can do whatever I want. Okay, so that's all looking good. We're just going to have a little bar for some social icons. So if people, you know, this is a welcome to my emails, right? So these people might have just stumbled across my website, and they might not know that I have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a YouTube channel, a newsletter, blah, 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 blah. Well, they probably do know I've got a newsletter because they're receiving it, but you know what I mean. I'm going to make this green, and then I actually have my icons, turn the border off, I actually have my icons from my website, so just on my other screen I'm just going to copy these, so bear with me. Always good to work on 2 screens, good quality of life improvement there. I'm going to paste these in here. And then I'm going to move them up here, zoom in a little bit. So I've got Dribbble, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You know, these are good things. Good times are happening here. So at the moment, what have I got? 20 pixels padding. Do I want 30? Do I want 50? 50 might be a bit much, let's go with 30. So I can drag this up here and then I can just plus 30 there. Now I've got the same top and bottom. And I know this is 50 here, and what have I got? I've got 15 in between each one. If you just copied these in and they were sort of all out of whack, that's all good. You can just select them all. You can use your align tools up here, and then you can use your distribute tool here. And then I'm going to group those, and then hold shift, select that, group that as well. Come here, and then let's call that social bar. And then we will probably need an unsubscribe link. I mean, I say probably, you definitely need an unsubscribe link for legal reasons. It's up to you whether you want to design it in here. I probably would. So what I'm going to say is, you know, that's the body of my email, and then sort of the legal bits, if there's any terms and conditions and stuff like that, it's always nice to sort of put them in this sort of floating abyss area at the bottom rather than in the content, because the content's what's really important. You want people to be hitting these buttons, not hitting the unsubscribe. So you know, you need to make it visible, but just have it as an afterthought rather than built into your actual design. So let's write something like, if you would like to unsubscribe, please click here. And then I might come to my styles and make this into the body style, my paragraph style. That's a bit big, so I'm going to drop this to 12, and then I'm going to do 12 times 1.5, something like that is okay. And I'm going to nudge it up a little bit, so 30 there, and then, or perhaps we could center the unsubscribe, or maybe it looks better over there. I'm not sure. We can decide when we get to it, and we can just make sure that this looks like a link by having it underlined. And I think that's okay. So in terms of finishing this off, I select the email at the top here, just drag this up, and I would just eyeball this, it's not too important. And there we go, we're looking pretty good. I think that's it for our design. So now if we wanted to, we can come back to our layers, and we could come in and we could see which one's this. This is development, so I could just label this up if I wanted to. And then, I mean, if you're working for yourself, you know, this is stage 1 done, I'm pretty happy with this. Or if you're working in a team, what you can do is you can select your email at the top here, file, export selected, then you can choose what you want to save it as. So you could save it as a PDF, and then you could call it whatever you want. So say if you call it proof, and then you have a PDF here, and then you can email that up the chain of command to whoever needs to sign it off, and they'll come back to you with millions of changes and whatnot, as is the case all the time. And then you can sort of redesign it, make sure everything's fully designed in here, get the sign off before we go to build it, because you don't want to be making changes in your code. It's going to be much easier for you to sort of design it in here, get it looking all nice and good, and then we can just code it, and it's super easy. So that's the design done. The last part of this video will be exporting the assets that we need, which shouldn't take too long at all. So if you ever exported assets for websites before, you will probably have done them as SVG, which is like a vector file. Unfortunately, it can work in email, but as I said before, we need to be safe, we need to be careful in email because a lot of things don't work. So go with PNG, go with JPEG. It's just going to make your life easier. There are so many different ways for people to open emails, you know, different devices and different email service providers, and they all work differently. They all render images differently. It can be quite frustrating. So from my experience, I've found that it's better to just work with PNG and JPEG, basically. So we've already exported this, so that's fine. So we need our logo. So what I would do is here, see this is groups. I could either ungroup it, or I can double click to come in here. This is called group 6, so that's bad, isn't it? So I could highlight this and call it TP logo email. Now with that selected, I can file, export selected, and as you might recall, we've said Retina screens require images to be 2 times the size. I want this to be in PNG because I want it to have a transparent background. And if I have this export for design selected, you can see it's going to export at 1 time. If I select web, it gives me the option to select 1 and 2 times here. If I leave it on 1, I'm saying it's been designed at 1 times the size, so when it exports, it will export it at 1 times the size and at 2 times the size. So if I export now and come back here, you can see we've got logo email a bit fuzzy and logo email 2 a little less fuzzy, so it's twice the size. So you see it's 50 by 36 the original, and this should be 100 by 72. So I can just delete this one, I can press enter, delete that, and there we go. I'm also going to delete my PDF there. So what we've got our header, we've got our logo. So this will all be written in code, and we could, if we were lazy and bad designers and bad coders, we would export these number blocks as images, but we're actually going to code those, so it's no big deal, it's easy. So what we want also now is we want these social icons, so we can come in here, come into the group, and you can see these are already labelled IC for icon. So I'm going to file, export, I'm going to put them in here, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and then I'm going to come in and delete all of the not 2 times versions. Delete those, and then I'm going to come in and just delete 2 times off them. You don't need to do this, it's up to you. You can label them whatever you want. This is just how I seem to work. Okay, so there's all of our images. So one final stage is we need to think about when people are out and about and they're loading emails on their phones and they don't have much reception, you know, they're not on Wi-Fi, maybe they're on 3G because there's no 4 or 5G available. We want the images to load quickly, especially if we've got an image at the top, and especially with the brand logo, we want that to load immediately. We don't want them to be sitting there waiting for things to load, because they'll get bored. People are really impatient these days. So we want to make these images as small as possible. So we need to compress them. Okay. So at the moment, this is 55 kilobytes. So these are already tiny, tiny, tiny. We probably don't need to compress these, but sometimes you might have one that's 1 megabyte. That's way too big. I would say maximum file size for email images should be around 500 kilobytes. But just get them as small as possible, but still looking crisp. So it's good to work in vector and export as PNG. You're going to get small file sizes. So down here I have ImageOptim. If you don't have it, I'll put a link to the description below, and all this does is compresses your images. There are lots of different compressors. I like this one, and it's so easy. All I do is open it up, get all of my images here, and just drag them in here. And we can see it's thinking about it here. Tick, 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 tick. I'm just waiting for the header. And the great thing about this, it doesn't save new copies, doesn't do anything like that. It's just replaced these images here, so you don't need to do anything else. They're all done, and you can see it's saved, you know, about 50% off all of them. It's knocked 77% out of this one. So now the file sizes are absolutely tiny, which means they're going to load really quickly. And there we go. There we have it. We're ready to code. So we've got our email designed. We have our style guide set up with all of our styles in here. So going forwards, if we were to make another email, if we were to do email 2, we can just duplicate this one, you know, and just come in and change our content. And if we were to update anything in our styles, it would just update throughout our email. So there we go. We're good to go. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I'm sorry that it took quite a long time, but I want you to see the process and sort of how it works and why we're measuring out pixels and stuff. And you'll see in the next email how important it is that we make sure we've got our spacing right here. It's going to make coding a breeze. So yeah, see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.